Hey everybody, it's Bill from My Victory Garden. Today I'm going to make my homemade blueberry preserves for you because when the harvest hits all at once, you got to figure out ways to preserve the harvest. That's what we've been doing for hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. I'm also going to start with a quote from my favorite science fiction author, Robert Heinlein. You may know him as the author of Starship Troopers, the movie, or Stranger in a Strange Land. Anyway, getting to his quote, here goes, and this is one of the reasons I do everything that I do, but it goes like this, and this quote was in Time Enough for Love by Robert Heinlein. Specialization is for insects. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Love Heinlein. Here we go. Step 1, sterilization. I like to do this beforehand. So on the stove, I've got some water that's almost ready to boil. So I'm not quite going to burn my hands off yet, though that would be funny. Over here, we've got the rack. So I also like to sterilize the rack. So that's going to go in first into the water. See, it fits nicely. And by the way, the rack is stainless steel. I highly recommend everything you use be stainless steel or iron. I've tried to do this over, I don't know, it's been more than a decade of experience of making my blueberry preserves and other preserves, by the way. Always stainless steel proves to be the best. Costs a little more, but it's worth it. Doesn't rust, holds up, you'll get your money's worth out of it. Also good for sterilization. So next, now that the rack's in, I will take the individual jars, and I like this size, I know how much my recipe makes. And the first thing I'm going to do is unscrew each of the jars, take the lids, drop them in here, take the bottle. With each of your jars, you want to take the top off, put the top in the hot water, and each of the jars needs to be filled with water and put into the hot water down into the rack. I'm now going to repeat this process for each of my jars. And these are standard mason jars. As you can see, all of our jars are in the water, and we're going to bring them up for sterilization by boiling them for 10 minutes. Also, the lids are in the water, and I like to bring these up to a light boil to sterilize them as well. So while our jars are beginning the sterilization process, which will be a boil for at least 10 minutes, and you can add a minute for every 1,000 feet above sea level that you're at, I'm now going to turn my attention to the blueberries and getting them prepared. Let's go over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is rinse the blueberries. You want to get off dirt, you want to look for any type of worms or other critters. You also want to look for stems, and then I'll do that as I load them into the scale. So for rinse, just cold water, shake them around, give them a good soaking. Alright, that's a good start. Let them drain. The weight measurements here don't have to be perfect. So, and the blueberries don't have to be dry. You can allow a little extra weight, but we're going to do 2.5 pounds of blueberries in my recipe. So now we're going to go over to the scale. This is a standard kitchen scale. So the first thing I need to do is turn it on. You can see it's going to adjust to 0. Now I'm going to put my bowl on it. Now I need to subtract the weight for the bowl, so I hit the tare button. So now we're at 0 grams. Now for here, I'm going to need to put in 2.5 pounds of blueberries. So I just start taking handfuls, And as I drop them in, I look for stems, I look for worms, and you can see the weight is going up. And as far as units, we're going to go over to ounces. Ounces is what we want. So for everybody out there, we're going for a grand total of 40 ounces, which is 2.5 pounds. That's 16 plus 16 is 32, and a half pound 8 is 40. And by the way, I'll usually go a little bit over to allow for more in the recipe. So here goes. As you can see, I now have 40 ounces, well, a little bit over, and in fact, I'm still going to add some overage just to give me a little extra play when it comes down to filling the jars. But 40 ounces of fresh, organic blueberries grown from the Victory Garden. I'm now going to add it to the cooking pot. I like to make sure that I have enough extra when I make the blueberry preserve, so even on top of the 40 ounces, I like to throw a little extra in. Worst case, if we have leftover, my family will eat the part that we don't put in the mason jars. Alright, to the blueberries in the pan, we add a 1/4 cup of fresh water. And, according to Bill's recipe, this is also where I add spices. Now you can vary this up with spices. For my recipe, I like our blueberry jam or preserves to be a little more savory. So I first start by adding a little bit of salt. Next, I'll throw in a little bit of cloves. That's ground cloves. Not too much though, otherwise it gets soapy. Just a little bit. I can already smell the aroma. The next spice that I use, cinnamon. This you can go heavy on. I love cinnamon blueberry preserves. The final ingredient is just a little bit of vanilla. Just a splash. Plenty. So now that your blueberries are in the pot, you've spiced it, you put a little bit of vanilla, you've got a 1/4 cup of water, you want to turn it on and bring it to a very low boil where the blueberries just start to pop open a little bit. And I'm timing this with the sterilization of my mason jars and lids. I've still got about at least 8 or 9 minutes to go on the sterilization, so I have plenty of time to do this first heating because we're going to heat it again. So for the first heating, here we go. We'll get this started. So now that we have the blueberries on their first boil, it's a light boil, I've been very gentle with my stirring. You actually turn them off and you let them cool. Here we go. So while my blueberries are cooling from the first boil, I'm now going to turn off the jars that have been sterilizing for 10 minutes as well as the lids. They can just sit in the warm water bath. We're going to leave them there until we're ready to use them, which will be shortly. So for my recipe and most recipes, there will be pectin that's called for. I happen to like Pomona's universal pectin, and it also comes with the calcium packet so that you can make the calcium water that also needs to be used. So follow this, you just open it up, Doesn't have to be refrigerated, and I keep a bunch of these in the house. And the first packet you'll see here is for the pectin. That's the big packet. The next packet you'll see is the calcium for the calcium water. So for the calcium water, we take half a cup of water and do half a teaspoon. So let's see, best way to open this up. So again, you don't have to be exact. In my mind, that's about half a teaspoon. Good to go. So I'm going to put it in here. I'm then going to take my half a cup of water, pour it in. I'm going to put the top on. And I'm going to shake. And that's all there is to making your calcium water that you're going to be using in this recipe. See that? See how it's white, milky in color? That's your calcium water. Alright, the blueberries have now had a chance to cool. So now we're going to prepare them for their next heating. We're going to add the 1/4 cup of lemon water. And now we're going to add the calcium water. You want to do about 1½ teaspoons. So again, it doesn't have to be exact. There's 1. And that's about a half. So now we turn the blueberries back on to the boil. The camera just died, so we've shifted over to my mobile phone. Remember to save the calcium water. This will be good for the next time you do preserves, and with me, that'll probably be tomorrow. So go ahead and put it in the refrigerator, and it'll keep. Alright, very quickly now, we're going to make our next add while the blueberries are warming up, and that's going to be maple syrup. A lot of people, when they make preserves or jam, they use sugar, sugar, sugar. It'll be a cup of sugar. It'll be 2 cups of sugar. I don't do that. The blueberries are really sweet enough to almost serve on their own, but the sugar content also helps to reduce bacteria. So what I do is I substitute maple syrup, typically a 1/2 cup. So we're going to pour 1/2 cup of maple syrup, maybe just a smudge more, because I threw in some extra blueberries. And then to that, we're going to add our pectin. So this is again Pomona's Universal Pectin. I'm opening the pack and I do a teaspoon and a half. There's about 1 teaspoon. And here's what I would call 1/2 teaspoon. Now that that's in, I'm going to blend it together. Don't let that pectin sit. This is your maple syrup, 1/2 cup, and your 1½ teaspoons of the pectin. You're blending this together because you were going to add it to the blueberries, which are heating up fairly quickly. And when you add it to the blueberries, it's going to cause them to fall off of a boil. They'll momentarily cool. And then once we add it in and we bring it back up to a boil, we're going to have to stir like nuts in order to make sure the pectin mixes throughout the preserves. Now remember, after you've used the pectin, you got to put away, fold it. This is the calcium. This is the packet of pectin. And now, unlike before, you need to put it in the refrigerator and it'll keep for your next jam making session. For the second heat, make sure you get the blueberries to a full boil. Once they get to a full boil, we'll then add our maple syrup pectin mix. Alright, now that we've got it going at a pretty hard boil, as you can see here, just a couple stirs, and we're getting ready to add our maple syrup pectin. Here it is. Now once we add this, you're going to have to stir like crazy. So here goes. I like to pour a little bit in at a time and stir as I go. Gentle stir, because remember, this is preserved. So the maple syrup and the pectin caused it to cool down just a little bit. And the idea is we're going to bring it up to another full boil for at least 2 minutes. But I'm still stirring because I want the pectin and maple syrup to mix throughout the blueberry preserves. Now that the preserves are boiling, we turn them off and we let them cool for a minute. Now, this is the time when we go over to our jars and our lids and we set them out so that we can get ready to load them with the yummy goodness. When you take the jars out, dump the water like this. Watch you don't burn your hand on hot water moving down. Get it as empty as you can, and for the moment, just stack them here. Get a good grip. Now I need to clean it up just a little bit before I top each one. The rack keeps them off the bottom, and also you want to make sure they're covered in at least 2 inches of water above the tops of each of the jars. Now that I've loaded the filled jars into the boiler, I need to turn it on and get them boiling for 10 minutes. And again, add an extra minute for every 1,000 feet above sea level that you're at. So this is going to sterilize them, and it's going to get them ready for the vacuum that they need. So the cans have been boiling now for 11 minutes. I give it 1 minute extra. And now that they've done that, I can turn them off, and you want to let it cool for 5 minutes. So it's off. Just let it sit right there and cool for 5 minutes. Okay, so after the 10-minute boil, we had a 5-minute cooling down period, and now it's time to remove our preserves. I always get burnt during this process. All right, everybody, they're out. You want to leave them alone for 24 hours, and then you should be hearing pops in the next probably 5 minutes or less, which is when the vacuum pulls the top down. All right, so that's Bill's Maple Blueberry Jam or preserves. Thanks for coming to my victory garden. Grow your stuff, eat your stuff, preserve your stuff. Have a great day, everybody.